The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast series, Scaling with Purpose, our 10-minute podcast series where we explore how to embed purpose into every level of your organization. I'm Steven Skash here with Tulio Siragusa. Hey, Tulio.
It's good to be back.
Yes. So today's episode is all about letting purpose drive self-management. So we will discuss how self-managed teams in these next level organizations use purpose as a guide, reducing the need for top-down control and unlocking greater autonomy, innovation, and trust. Please catch our last episodes. We're kind of building on each of these logically here. So the topic is at the core of what makes these next level organizations really so powerful. So traditional hierarchies, they rely on managers to oversee and control and direct teams, but in these self-managed teams, purpose becomes the real leader. When everyone is clear on the organization's purpose, teams can make decisions autonomously and stay aligned and really are much more flexible and fast at times when they're really good at this. Versus that top-down decision-making that, can get bottlenecked somewhere. So Tulio, let's dive in here.
So I want to first clarify for those who might be thinking self-management is like flat or chaos or even socialism. That's not what self-management is. I just want to be clear about that. And so it's actually quite the opposite of this idea of chaos and absolutely, like everybody just does their own thing. It's really about creating an environment where teams don't need constant oversight because they have a shared sense of purpose to guide their actions. So it's not some boss who's dictating every step to do and an underling boss and another person, all these layers of management. No, it's the purpose that everyone shares in, that becomes the boss, right? So when everybody has this sense of purpose that guides their action, the authority shared, and then this purpose really replaces the need for micromanagement and allows individuals to take ownership of their work. And it's based on this idea that everybody's going to be adults, right? So it works because you're going to be an adult who's accountable and responsible for yourself. So to break it down, self-managing teams operate in three key principles, which connects directly to purpose. One is clarity of purpose. That's the North Star, right? So having clarity of why are we here? What are we looking to accomplish? What's our purpose here? Then two is the empowered decision-making with purposeful boundaries, right? So it's understanding what can I do within the confinement of achieving this purpose, and what are my limitations within that? Because that's also showing respect for various teams who have different specialized capabilities. And then three, it's trust and accountability anchored on purpose. So it's trusting that my peers are going to act like adults as I am, and that they're going to take care of what they're accountable for, and they're also anchored on the similar purpose.
Yeah, so really that first principle there, the clarity of purpose as the North Star, that's really that's key to everything here. So for these self-management teams to work properly, they need to understand the organization's purpose, and this provides context for every decision. So if a team knows the why that the organization exists and the impact it's trying to make, then they can ask, in the middle of their workday or middle of whatever they're working on, does this decision move us closer to that purpose? So that clarity kind of eliminates the need for constant top-down guidance and allows them to freewheel a little bit more and be in alignment with everyone.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful point because it also allows for self-governance, right? Do I want to work 15 hours, 8 hours, in the middle of the day, later in the day? It all depends on how I can support this purpose. Take, for example, Buurtzorg. We talked about them in the last episode. They're a Dutch healthcare company. Their teams are completely self-managing, and their purpose is delivering compassionate, client-centered care, which serves as their North Star. So think about this beautiful, empathetic purpose that they have. Every decision they can make, as long as they go back to the question, is this helping us deliver compassionate client-centered care, they can't go wrong. So because of this purpose that it's clear, nurses can make decisions on their own about patient care. Teams, schedules, and resource allocations, all these things don't need managerial approval to get done, because as long as it supports that purpose, then that becomes the guiding star that makes every decision possible.
Yeah, exactly. And that brings us to principle 2, which is empowered decision-making within purpose boundaries. So purpose provides a framework, or what we might call freedom within boundaries. So leaders in these next level organizations empower their teams to make decisions, but with a shared understanding of how those decisions must align with the company's purpose and values. So this ensures that autonomy doesn't lead to misalignment. And Tule, you had mentioned something there about different work days and different hours. I really do think that this autonomy really lends itself well to the remote working environment, or when you're working asynchronously, right? You don't always need to wait for the boss's approval on stuff when you're off on these different schedules in different parts of the world, really. And we've got all these communication tools these days. So you want to be better at working kind of asynchronously within your team and kind of know where your North Star is, right, at all times.
Could you imagine being a nurse with the doctor on call and the doctor's on vacation for the weekend? Like, I have to wait for the doctor to give me an answer on how to provide compassionate care to this patient. I mean, that's how most hospital systems are set up. Whereas here, it's like, I know what I need to do because it aligns with our company's purpose. So, it just ultimately kind of makes sense too. It's common sense to a certain degree,
Yeah, and what's interesting, about that too is Buurtzorg does also work asynchronously in times. Like if they're not an expert in a certain area, they can like Slack someone, and some other person in that organization can be an expert and say, hey, here's what you need to do for that. So they can kind of work together with these other sort of self-managed pods, but you really need that kind of autonomy to really innovate and experiment and solve problems, but you got to have some kind of alignment to be able to do that. So it's a practical way to really do this is by asking kind of these purpose-driven questions like, how does this project serve our purpose that I'm working on right now? What impact will this decision have on our purpose? So when teams can answer these questions, they're more likely to make these choices that stay consistent with the goals, and they're able to do that a lot more autonomously, right? And that's really the goal of this, is empowering people, and in today's day and age, having that autonomousness, is that a word? And the ability to work on different times, different parts of the country, different parts of the world. You really want to move into more of this kind of model.
Absolutely. And that takes us to principle 3, which is probably the biggest fear traditional organizations have in looking into self-management models. And that is trust and accountability is key. And it works because it's anchored in purpose. That's the key thing. There's a lot of organizations that deal with trust and accountability, but it's anchored on fear sometimes, or other different motivational factors. But when it's anchored on purpose, and it's a purpose everyone shares because they contributed to it, it's super powerful. So self-managing teams rely on trust. Leaders don't need to monitor every action when they trust their teams. So you can spend more time participating and contributing and making sure there's alignment with the purpose. But this trust also comes with accountability. So the teams hold themselves and each other accountable for results because they're investing in achieving the organizational purpose. I used to always joke around and say, in this kind of organization, not one person can fire you, but anyone in the company can fire. In other words, we're holding each other accountable at any given time. Any team member can hold you accountable and say, hey, what's going on here? You're falling behind. It's hurting the team. Let's have a conversation and see how we can support you to get back on track. And sometimes the refusal of that support could end up in literally the team letting a person go. So there's tremendous accountability built into this. It's not like just do your own thing and nobody gives you any accountability. So that's where purpose-driven cultures really shine, because people connect with meaningful purpose. And because of that, we're naturally motivated to deliver results. And purpose becomes a unifying force that drives accountability. And in these environments, teams don't need managers to check in on them every day. They hold their own accountable meetings with each other, and they care about the impact they're having and making on each other. They understand what's at stake with each other. So there's a higher level of commitment, actually. So let's bring it to life in a real example. So Morningstar, we actually had interviewed Doug Kirkpatrick on the show, who was one of the founders of Morningstar. This is a tomato processing company that operates in a fully self-managed model. Their purpose is to produce the highest quality tomato products for the customers while fostering a culture of personal responsibility. So imagine that being built into your purpose, personal responsibility. So the teams at Morningstar don't have managers, 0 managers, yet they coordinate complex operations like production and logistics absolutely seamlessly. Why? Well, because their purpose provides clarity, number one. The trust they have for each other enables accountability. And the employees even negotiate responsibility with one another and hold themselves to the company's values and goals. They even have engagement, collaboration agreements with each other. So it's like next level in terms of accountability. I don't know any fiat type of organization, hierarchical or command and control organization where the employees actually have an agreement with each other on how they're going to be supportive and accountable to each other. That doesn't exist. The only agreement is with the boss, right? So this is even next level, better collaboration and better accountability for those companies who might be like, oh, that doesn't work. It's chaos. No, it's actually more accountability than you could ever possibly imagine. So that's the beautiful thing about it. No need for managers.
I remember that show with Doug. He brought out the org chart, and it was like this constellation, sort of just this nebula of how people interact. It's a really fascinating show. If you get a chance to listen to that, we dove in pretty deep there. So purpose becomes this connective tissue that aligns everybody in the organization. So it replaces that top-down control with trust, autonomy, and shared accountability. And when teams understand the purpose, they act as co-creators of the organization's success. So thank you for joining us on this episode of Scaling with Purpose. Today, we kind of explored how purpose drives these self-managing teams by providing that clarity, empowering decisions, and fostering this trust and accountability. In our next episode, we're going to talk about purpose at the heart of your culture, how to build a culture where purpose is lived and breathed every day. So if you're joining this series, don't forget to subscribe and share it with others on this purpose-driven journey. Until next time, keep scaling with purpose.